For this warm-up, I'd like you to try to find BC. So we're going to use the segment addition postulate and set up AB plus BC equals AC. Let's plug in our knowns, add like terms, and subtract from both sides. And we get x equals 15. We're not done. We found x, so we need to remember to plug in x into BC. So BC equals x plus 12. We plug in 15, and we get 27. You notice about the relationship between AB and BC. AB is 27 and BC is 27. So we can see that they're the same length. We know that B then is directly in the middle of AC and BC. And that is what we'll be exploring today, the midpoint. The midpoint is the point that makes AB congruent to BC. This is lesson 1.3, which talks about midpoint and distance formulas. The midpoint of a segment is a point that divides a segment into two congruent segments. We mark congruent segments by putting dashes along the different segments. That denotes that they're the same length. A segment bisector is a point, segment, or line that divides a line segment into two equal parts. In a skateboard design, VW bisects XY at point T. So bisecting something means to cut it in half. So if we know that XT is 39.9 centimeters, we want to find what the total length across is. So remember, bisect means to cut something in half. So we know that XT and TY are the same. So all we have to do is substitute them in, the same value, and add them together. So our total length is 79.8. So if it cuts something in half, we can either add it twice or multiply it by 2 to get 79.8 centimeters. Here's example 2. Point M is the midpoint of VW, and we want to find the length of VM. So if M is the midpoint, then we know that these two, VM and MW, are congruent. We can plug in their values, subtract 3x from both sides, and add 1 to both sides, and we get x equals 4. Now remember, we're not trying to solve for x, we're trying to solve for VM. So we plug in VM, we plug in x, and we get 16 minus 1, VM equals 15. Now if you wanted to verify this is correct, we could plug in x into MW, which would be 3 times 4, which is 12, and 12 plus 3 is 15, and then we'd see 15 equals 15, so we know we did it right. Identify the segment bisector of PQ. So what is cutting PQ in half? Well, it's line L. Line L is what's cutting in half, so that would be the segment bisector. Our goal here is to find PQ, the entire length of this segment, and we know the segment bisector is L and that it's cutting it in half at its midpoint M. So we can set PM equal to MQ. We add 2 to both sides, add 7 to both sides, and divide by 7. So we get 18/7. So it's not always going to be a perfect number. Don't assume that you're wrong if you get a fraction. So we want to find PQ, so I'm going to plug in x into PM. And I end up getting 41/7. And I'm going to plug in x into MQ just to verify that I also get 41/7. Plug in 18/7, and I get 77 over 11 is the same thing as 11. 36 over 7 is 2 times 18/7, and we subtract those and we get 41/7. So PM and MQ are both 41/7. We add those together to find what PQ is, and our final answer is 82/7. The next thing we need to do is find the coordinates of a midpoint. Now, if we're on a coordinate plane, we're trying to figure out what the x and y coordinate are, and we're trying to find that point directly in between them. Let's first look at the x value. The change in x values goes from 2 to 4, so what is directly in between it would be 3. Then let's look at the y values. The change goes from -1 to 3, so that's a distance of 4, so it cuts it in half, and we get this point 3, 1. So let's talk about how I found that. Algebraically, it's the idea of taking the average of the x's and the average of the y's to make a new point. So I can take x1 plus x2 and divide by 2, and that'll give me the x coordinate. And I can take y1 plus y2, and that'll give me the y coordinate. So let's do some examples. So we have one endpoint is 1, -3, and the other endpoint is 4, 2. So now we can guesstimate, okay, what's between 1 and 4, and what's between 2 and -3. So the formula is the two x's added together, so 1 plus 4 divided by 2, so that'd be 5 divided by 2, and we have -3 plus 2 divided by 2, so we get the midpoint is 5/2, -1/2. Let's look at another one where the midpoint of JK is 2, 1. One endpoint is 1, 4, and the midpoint is 2, 1. So let's first look in the change in x values. So the change here from 1 to 2 is just a 1. It's only moved over 1, so we need to move over an equal distance. So that would just be another 1. So it'd go 1, 2, 3. Now let's look at the y values. So the change from 4 to 1 is going down 3. I'm subtracting 3. So it should go 4 to 1, and then 1 minus 3 would be at -2. So we have 3, -2. I want you to try the next set on your own, and we'll go over them together in class.